Really okay.
I think I really can Tracer if they go Doomfist. I can really kill everyone.
Yeah, maybe.
I really
I
think.
think we just monkey more like
I
Yeah.
really
something.
think Tracer.
No, yeah, you can.
Yeah, Tracer's
But
fine.
I didn't want to switch because
We can like monkey more Sombra Tracer.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey guys, Mineral here with another video. For this one, I wanted to review the Ilios Well round between the Shanghai Dragons and the San Francisco Shock. As you guys heard in the intro clip, the Shock were forced into making adjustments on the fly against the eventual Stage 3 champions, and the team concluded to run Tracer in certain scenarios. Now I thought this was an interesting little wrinkle, especially for this round, and despite this being a 100-0 round in favor of the Dragons, it really could have gone either way, and this adjustment could potentially have paid off. So I wanted to break the round down and talk about the various adjustments of each team, the intricate details, and the thought process behind the picks. Now, if we just talk about the compositions real quick, because the fight is essentially going to take place on 2 or 3 fields here. Now, Sinatra went Tracer because naturally, anytime you play against the Dragons, you don't want to mirror the Widow. You don't have a Widow that can match DM. Almost no Widow in the league can actually do that. So really your goal should be is to put as much pressure on him so that he is forced to switch. And that's why I kind of like this pick by Sinatra, because that's what it's kind of designed to do. Now, whether he can force DM off this pick or not is usually going to depend a lot on how the first fight goes. As you can see, Sinatra is taking top, and like I said, the fight is going to take place on 3 different fronts. So DM usually has two potential pathing routes. He either goes here or he either goes to the right side, which is why Sinatra, as you can see here, is rolling out on top. So Sinatra's job here is essentially to mirror DM and put pressure on him. If he can't win that duel against DM, that means that the duel that is going to be taking place up here between Rascal and Moth and Ding and Coma is most likely going to go into the favor of Rascal, because Rascal being here is going to be very, very exposed to the Widowmaker. It's very, very difficult for Rascal to play Widow here. And both of these teams are essentially going to have to swap their retaking comps, whoever wins the first fight, at least adjust them. So again, if we look at this, Sinatra is playing slow. He hasn't really showed himself yet. So DM clearly here doesn't know as of yet that Sinatra is there. You see, the duel is starting here. If we look at DM's angle, he doesn't quite have an angle yet on Rascal, but if he steps in here, he does. And then the Pharmacy duel is just very lopsided for the Dragons. Also important, while we're paying attention to all of this, is to pay attention to the duel on the ground. Now, there's also a difference in flex support. So Violet here is on the Zen, and he's pathing up top. So really, when the fight is essentially starting to take place, at least like the trade, as you can see, is already starting here. There's already a ball flying from Gamsu. Violet is putting himself in a position where he wants to give Rascal an advantage of his duel. So if Sinatra, on the other side of the map, can zone out DM and buy enough time for Violet to put a Discord on Ding, then this is potentially a duel that Rascal can win. Because if there's a Discord on Ding, that means Rascal with a damage boost striking can potentially kill him. Or at least get close to it. It gives him a little bit of an edge. You know, he's also going to be shooting at Ding. Gives you a better opening. So really, that's how everyone's allocated resources in this trade. So a fight is going to be taking place here, a fight is going to be taking place here, and a fight is going to be taking place in the air. I actually think, since the nerfs of the Discord, I don't think you can actually Discord one-shot the Pharaoh, but still, you can see, needless to say, how all of these things happening at the same time are going to affect each other. Now, Gamsa shoots out his shield first, and again, allocation of resources. There is no Ana here who can potentially sleep or heal his teammates. Violet is over there, and what this pull does is it forces Super to use his Fortify. Now, why is this important? This is important because Gamsu hasn't used his. He still has his Fortify, which means that you're going to have a bit of an opening where Super is not going to... You're going to have an opening, essentially, where if we look at the cooldowns... Super is going to have 10 seconds on his Fortify, while Gamsu is going to have this pull a little bit faster. There's going to be like a 4 or 5, maybe even a 6-second window where Gamsu is going to have a pull, but Super won't be able to block it with his Fortify. Now, obviously, Luffy also hits a sleep on Choyobin, so you get less pressure on the shield. Also important, but ultimately that's what we have to remember until the next play. Now, DM clearly here is not expecting Sinatra, and Sinatra is doing well to hide here because he's just focused on trying to help Ding win the duel, and Ding is already winning the duel regardless because Violet so far hasn't really managed to do much. He hasn't seen anyone, he hasn't shot anyone, so really this initial start of the fight, the Shock are fighting 5 versus 6. Obviously with Choi sleeping, you can even make that 4 versus 6. So DM jumps up, no idea that Sinatra is going to come for him. And Sinatra, pretty much to win this fight, he almost has to one-clip DM here. Because Luffy does have an angle to protect him. Now DM is safe. And now that he's safe, now that DM is with all his 3 teammates here, now Sinatra can't really do much in this fight. He can only distract them. He can prevent DM from taking this high ground, but he can't stop him from helping with this duel. And if we take a look at the fight, or at DM's POV, he knows he doesn't have to worry about him anymore. He can focus on helping Ding kill Rascal. If we look at Violet's POV, he's also helping. Hits a nice headshot on Coma. So if DM doesn't hit this shot, or if he dies, or if Sinatra buys a little more time, there is a world in which you can maybe kill Coma here. But because he doesn't, Rascal is exposed and DM gets the pick. So now you've got the edge. Now we have to consider this as well. The Dragons, the Dragons are going for that pull now. So as you can see, the second pull is out for Gamsu right now. And if we look at Super, still 6 seconds away from the Fortify. So now you've got that open. And I really love what the Dragons are doing here because the Dragons fell back a little bit, but the second shield that they use is a lot further up. The further up this shield is, the easier it is for them to hit this pull hook. If it's further back, if the shield is here, it's very risky for Youngjin to push forward. Imagine if the shield is here and Youngjin pushes forward to try and hit the hook. Super still has room to fall back into, where Youngjin couldn't necessarily hook. Or at least Youngjin would be putting himself in a position where Choi could counter hook him or push up and hook him into the pit. There's a lot of counter plays. But now this shield prevents all of that. It allows Youngjin to go all the way here, so he closes the distance on the pull. And Super can't really fall back out of this. You can see Choi, very aware of this threat. He backs out of it, but he can't really push forward because of the shield placement here either. Super gets pulled, he dies. So now you've lost the fight. You lost the fight, and really this fight ended in that first sequence. So within the first 2 seconds, it kind of ends. You lost the fight, the tank fight here in the front, because you didn't use your Fortify and the Dragons didn't use their Fortify and Super did, which means that Gamsu is free to take this risk. Like, he's fine to take this risk because even if a pull comes up, he can block it. So you've won the fight there. Sinatra couldn't kill DM, and then DM helped with the duel, and obviously Violet didn't have enough time to work with. So now you've gotten those 2 kills, the fight ends. Now if we consider what's going to happen in the next fight. So if we consider the swaps here, Rascal naturally can never ever return here on the Pharah, right? Like, if he can't, DM is going to have all the ground in the world now. Sinatra is going to be able to potentially pressure him, but now DM can go up here. You can never retake here as a Pharah into Pharah Widow if you're a Rascal. So you have to switch. And he shows the Widow here. But what we established, not a bad pick. Definitely a decent pick because it limits where Ding can play, but you also don't really want to mirror into DM here, just because of how excellent DM is at this hero. And now you see Rascal going Sombra. And this is just improvisation, I think, from the Shock side. Considering that he locked the Widow first and then went Sombra, I think this is just improvising. They didn't really know what to pick here, simply because Sinatra also improvised with this pick, with the Tracer, which Again, I think it could have worked. Obviously didn't in the first fight. So you're basically improvising here now. Now, what I like about positioning here from the Dragons is the fact that they're holding really far up here. So why are the Dragons holding this far up? You would say, well, maybe they should just hold further back, play more defensive. But really, by holding up front here, you put the Shock in a position where, well, if they want to actually pressure Gamsu and do something about him, they're going to have to push in an area where Ding has free reign. Look at Ding's field of view. All of this is covered by Ding. So he's going to kill you before you can do anything by Gamsu. So if Gamsu can draw aggression main, completely fine. Definitely something he wants to do. And if they don't, if you force them to go over there, well, he's at least pressuring you early. Maybe you can hit a pull hook here. So you're just snuffing off. You're just cutting off map control by a ton here. If you're the Dragons, you're leveraging your strengths. It also allows DM to play a little more aggressive because his front line is further up. He can take this angle and he can be more aggressive. And when he's playing this angle, now it's very, very, very difficult for the flankers to actually get to DM. Like we said, Sinatra can't really mark him now. He can't get to where DM is, and obviously Koma is going to be in there. He's going to be able to pocket DM at any point as well. So very difficult to retake here. Now, the only way you kind of retake against this setup is if you actually do what the Shock do here. And very, very nice heads up play by Rascal here. Because if we look at Rascal's POV here, if we can find it. Because Gamsu is overextended, yes, he's in a position where he can get covered by Ding, but that's assuming he also has his cooldowns to protect himself with. So if he gets pushed, he wants to still be able to fall back, have Fortified to protect himself, and then kind of keep the Shock on a leash as he's pulling them into Ding's sidelines. However, very nice positioning here by Rascal, and he finds the hack. So now he takes away the shield, he takes away the Fortify from Gamsu. While the Shock, naturally, they understand they don't want to push here. They push on the opposite side. But really, it doesn't matter because he doesn't have shield. And you have Sinatra and Rascal who pretty much on their own can kill Gamsu here, even through... even without the Discord, even with Luffy essentially free healing. They can do that. And you can also see this pull by Super. I like this as well because it essentially zones out Youngjin. Youngjin could have potentially maybe pressured Rascal to prevent this or help him a little bit. But once he stood there and the pull was coming, he's kind of forced to fall back and takes himself a little bit out of the fight. Maybe he can get an angle here to potentially pick off Rascal, but he's kind of out of the fight. And Gamsu dies. So now you're in a pretty good spot if you are the Shock. You still have to be worried about DM. He hits these shots. You know, you can still die to this. And there, like we said, there's nothing that can really touch him. So if nothing can really touch DM here, if you can't really pressure him reliably, you have to use cover. You have to make sure he doesn't kill you. You obviously have to hold the risk, which is what Super is doing. He cannot give up this space because then Koma can potentially come in and risk. And while all of that is happening, Rascal and Sinatra, they have to pressure these guys out. The biggest advantage you have in this fight is that Super can reliably pressure the point with a shield, while the Dragons can't really relieve point pressure. The only one who can do that is essentially Youngjin, right now, as it stands. You can also see Choi flanking on the opposite side. Now Shock is doing a really good job choking out the Dragons of map control. You can see like how they're pushing everything. Ding is obviously pressuring from the top, but good usage of cover here. He can only really pressure Super here. And he's actually under a lot of pressure. So there is a chance for Ding to be super aggressive here and bring the fight back. However, the fact that the Shock are playing such an up-tempo style, they're pushing this advantage, it's much harder to do that. As you can see, Rascal pushes in, hacks Luffy. Oh, sorry, not Luffy. He hacks Youngjin. Choi is now in range for the pull. Grabs DM. So very good tempo. They're trying to win this fight as fast as possible, the Shock are. And even though Super has to give up a little bit of space here, not the end of the world because the rest of your team are just choking the Dragons out of map control. However, The difference is now that Luffy is coming up on his nano boost. And the only way you actually get to contest the point for long enough, for it not to flip in the favor of the Shock, you pretty much have to nano Youngjin. You have to get the nano, you have to get it. And I think it's pretty clear here that Luffy communicates to Youngjin that he's coming up on the nano. Because otherwise, Youngjin wouldn't really be pushing here. So Youngjin overextends towards the well, because he knows that he can hook Cho up and down, and Luffy can nade both of them and get his nano. So even though Sinatra and Rascal are doing a tremendous amount of work here, they killed Gamsu, they hack Youngjin, they kill Luffy, they've done so much here, you give yourself a bit of a chance here for the Dragons. Gamsu, still very far away from the fight. You still don't have a lot of staying power on the point, but Youngjin at least can buy you a little bit of time because he's naded. Now, also because he's naded and because he pushed into this type of an area, he pressured Choi, he's drawing the aggression from Sinatra and Rascal. And that opens up this tiny window for Koma to go in for a res on DM, which, again, would not have happened if Luffy dies before he nanos Youngjin. Probably the window is not there. Youngjin gets hacked, but again, he's super tanky, very difficult to chew through all of that. Now DM is back as well. Now you're buying quite a lot of time. Maybe Gamsu can make his way back. Now, DM goes up on the high ground, which is good. And he pops a wall hack, which is also good. Because what did we establish in the beginning was the fact that if he plays on a high ground higher than Sinatra and Rascal, then they can't really get to him, right? If he plays here on the retake, it doesn't matter if Sinatra goes here. It's going to be very difficult to pressure. So I like the fact that he grapples up here. He could either grapple up here or there, and then neither Sinatra nor Rascal, who are both playing on the ground, can really get to him. And then he's pretty much free. And all DM really needs to do here is peek this angle and hold this. He doesn't have to push this, just hold this. As long as he's holding this, he's compromising the positions of the supports. You're under a lot of pressure. Much harder for Moth to push up and heal super. So all he needs is to stay alive and keep that pressure. But he's just really focused on the kills here. Because he's really focused on the kills, he drops on the ground, which is a big no-no, because this is when Sinatra can actually touch him. If he's here, Sinatra has to go all the way around here, or at least go here and blink up. And Ding needs to be paying. Sorry, not Ding. DM needs to be paying attention to where Sinatra is. He needed to check where's his positioning. Am I going to be safe on this scope? And then focus on the rest. But again, a wrench that the Shock they just threw a Tracer out there. Maybe DM hasn't thought a lot about how to play against Tracers, so he makes this mistake and drops on the ground, which puts him in danger. However, the big clutch comes here from Ding. Ding hits a conk and boops down super. So remember that point pressure that we just said Dragons couldn't match because Youngjin doesn't have as much staying power on the point as super. Well, now Youngjin has taken Choyman back to spawn and super has been booped down. So that huge advantage that almost seemed unsurmountable, especially with DM making this mistake and being really greedy, is now flipped for the Dragons. So everything that could have gone right for the Dragons in that sequence that seemed insurmountable has now flipped. DM does die, but instead of this being a 6 versus 3, which is essentially should have been at least like a 5 versus 3, because Ding gets that boop, now it's not that inconceivable. Now you actually have more staying power on the point because you have Youngjin there and Gamsu's almost back. So you have it's all slowly flipping into the favor of the Dragons again. Now, the only way you can actually match... actually, another thing that's important to mention here is the fact that because Shock don't have the point, they don't have to rush to touch the point. If Shock had point control here, and it was ticking in favor of them, one of these guys would have to just keep touching the point, and then you couldn't really even think about clutching the fight. Even now, you could argue, very difficult, probably can't really win this fight. But the way you can potentially get enough staying power to win this fight and push them over is if Violet can hit his trance. But you're still under a ton of pressure here. So, we see what's happening here. Violet is pushing over. Still does not have his trance though. And the pull comes out. But the pull is a little bit early. It's a little bit early because Youngjin's hook cooldown is on 2 seconds. So if they're just a little bit, there's absolutely no reason for the Dragons to rush here. They have the point presence, they have the tanks, they have the control in the air with Ding, they have the pressure, they don't have to rush anything. They also have the point control. So they could have just communicated their pull hook a little bit better and synced up. This pull hook kills Violet, fight over, you're all good. But the hook is not there. And even then, it would have been fine, but the Dragons actually push in front of the shield. So when if they would have stayed behind the shield, there's no way Violet gets this trance. But because they push in front of the shield, he actually even gets the trance and tanks the hook. So once again, this chaotic fight is turning to be potentially winnable or clutchable for the Shock. So a lot of like small mistakes made here by the Dragons. Rascal also dueling Ding here. He gets the hack. Coma pops his Valk, but you can't really save Gamsu here because the Discord is already on him. Violet can help Sinatra tank it. Let's see, where are the tanks? You have Choi coming back to the fight. So now again, the tide is sort of turning for the Shock. The issue here is that Moth pops his Valk and he's looking for Rascal. He tries to heal Rascal. Rascal is going for the Mega. So Moth wastes quite a lot of time trying to catch him instead of just focusing on potentially pocketing Sinatra to help him maybe clear Ding, maybe clear Youngjin. He could be damage boosting both of these guys and trying to secure kills. So Moth wastes a little bit of time there on the side on the wrong thing. Maybe a little bit of miscommunication there. Sinatra's recall is forced out. Misses his pulse bomb, and he should have died to Youngjin's hook, but Choi just makes it back in time to actually grab to save Sinatra. And Sinatra, obviously, most likely not aware of this. He's actually getting barraged as well, and he only has one blink, so he tries to dodge it, so he jumps into the pit because he doesn't have a recall. So again, so many little things turning the tide here. And Coma, with his Valk, gets the res on Gamsu. So now, once again, the tide is turned again. Yeah, you killed Youngjin. You killed Ding. Moth killed Ding with his pistol here. Did a very good job. But Sinatra blinked out, so once again, not optimal for the Shock. Still potentially winnable, because now you have both of your tanks coming back into the fight, whereas Youngjin is dead. Sinatra doesn't blink down. You probably win this fight regardless. But another boop, sorry, pulled down the pit for Choi. So a lot of environmental kills really turning the tide. You could see how this fight, just during this fight, it flipped in the favor of Shock and Shanghai probably 5 or 6 times. And then there's a big play on one end that again turns the tide, which is why this fight was so interesting to break down and watch. Now you're kind of screwed because you've lost Sinatra and Choi. You can't really break the shield. Yeah, you rest Violet, but you rest him in a spot where he's going to get isolated with DM, so the fight is just kind of over. Rascal can't really do enough. His Translocate is forced out as well. Violet on the side again. He's isolated. He's going to die. Full reset. And it's important to understand that if the Shock managed to win that fight, you can actually see it now. DM has actually already swapped off because of how much he struggled against the Tracer. And why can't he retake as Widow against the Tracer? Well, if you would have cleaned this fight up if you're the Shock and DM tries to retake as a Widow, now you don't have that luxury where you have the high ground advantage over the flankers, because Sinatra could easily be hiding here, so could Rascal. You have all of this space that you have the time to take with the flankers. So it would be almost impossible for you to clear enough space for DM to do work. Which means that's a perfectly fine way for Sinatra and Rascal to force DM off of his comfort pick, which is the Widow. So good strategy by the Shock. Even losing this fight, they did enough to pressure DM to force him off of that pick. And had they won that fight, you can potentially see a scenario through which you end up winning this round. Now Sinatra goes for Widow here to counter Ding. He doesn't have to worry about DM's Widow anymore. So you've actually kind of gotten an advantage in the matchups here by the Shock, which is why I do think their picks were smart. It's just small things that kind of went against them. And you can see immediately, as soon as Sinatra is on the Widow and there's no Widow to respond by the DM, look at how compromised Ding is. Rather than playing over here and pressuring all of this space, he has to play defensive. And you still like your chances here with the Shock. You have both Tankles, you have Rascal's EMP, you have Ding, who's compromised with this positioning because of Sinatra's Widow. So really like the swaps here by the Shock. Now, where does it all go wrong? It goes wrong here. The Dragons, they don't stand pat. They know that the EMP is coming. They don't want to. They want to make a play. So by them pushing on this side of the map, they can draw a lot of aggression, and that can create an angle here for Ding. And this is what the Dragons do so well. They pressure from one side, and then Ding takes the other angle. And you can see this flank is clearly called because at the same time as the tanks are pushing up on the left side, Ding is pushing up on the right side. Now, it's still risky for him because Sinatra is on the Widow and he does get an angle here. Could easily hit a headshot here. Gets two decent openings to hit a shot. But still, the timing is great. You can see these guys are going for a pull hook. And this catches the Shock by surprise. You could easily pick off Moth here. Instead, the hook hits Rascal, who has the EMP, who has the game-winning ultimate. Rascal dies. So you also see Super, because they didn't expect this, Super tried to counter-pull as well. Because if you think about it, and in reality, Rascal died in a pretty resible spot, right? Like you can realistically just push up and push these guys off. If you look at the positioning, what are the Dragons going to do to stop it? They can't really stop it if the Shock push in here as a team. But the Dragons are holding this space so aggressively. You have DM pressuring. You have Ding pressuring. Again, Sinatra gets a good opening. You can't ask for a much better angle than this. But he misses it. And Ding takes cover. Again, very smart at playing cover. Now Sinatra doesn't have an angle anymore. And now you can't really go for this res because the Dragons are putting their bodies on it. They're going to camp it. It's going to take a while to migrate. You can't trade the kills either because Super has already used his pull. So you can't counter pull. You can't use the counter pull combo. You also don't have the shield because DM, once again, pressured. And this is the most important thing. The pressure is coming in from 3 different angles at the same time, which is why this hack finds its way there. And if you don't have a shield, well, Moth can't go in and res either. So, Rascal remains dead, and you just get pressured and you die there. So even though Ding was compromised, he did well enough to take cover, to dodge Sinatra. Sinatra could have potentially clutched, which is why I really like the swap. And Shock just get really unlucky that the pull actually hooks Rascal, but I also really like the proactiveness by the Dragons. They didn't stand pat. They went for a play and they pressured at the same time. And that synergy, that cross angle, the crossfire setup that they generally set up is really good. And now you just kind of close out the fight and push your advantage. So just an interesting point that I wanted to break down because, again, a lot of switches, a lot of ways this could have gone in Shock's favor, a lot of ways it could have gone in Dragons' favor. I liked the on-the-fly adjustments by the Shock. Didn't work out, but that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Also, I thought it was very interesting to break down the first fight because of how impactful it is. Because, again, if Sinatra does a little bit better here, or maybe if the tanks on the point win the fight in the first fight, maybe you win the first fight and you get DM off the Widow immediately, could potentially have been 100-0 by the Shock. So, interesting adjustment by the Shock, not playing into the strengths of DM, not taking the mirror swaps overall, and a very high level of play across the board. A lot of sloppiness also in that middle fight by a lot of different players at different times. A lot of clutch plays as well. So I hope you enjoyed the review, and see you next time.